8:58 p.m. in Mobile, Alabama. A woman put a call across to 911 operatives. As soon as the 911 operative answered the call, she asked about the woman's emergency. The woman said she needs the police right there in Mobile Terrace. The operative asked the woman for her address. The 911 operative heard the woman asking the name of the street from someone else. The caller got the name of the street from the person. She told the 911 operative that the street is Claude Harris Drive. She told the operative that someone just shot her son. The 911 operative asked the woman whether her son was still conscious. The caller told the 911 operative that her son is dead 3 times. She said someone has just killed her son. When the first respondents arrived, they found the mother and her sister outside. When they entered the house, they found 2 men in the living room who riddled with bullets. The first respondents said they are going to need homicide to respond to the case. The victim found on the couch is 37 years old Nelson Bedgood, known as Ray. He was born and raised in Mobile. He was the founder and chief executive officer of a local van production company. Ray leaves behind his wife and 3 daughters. Ray was shot 6 times, 3 times in the head and once in the shoulder, chest, and arm. The second victim is 41 years old guy known as Blue, was also born and raised in Mobile and recently quit his job as a cook in a local restaurant to start a landscaping business. Blue leaves behind 4 children, his mother, and 2 sisters. Blue was shot 5 times, 3 times in the head, once in the arm, and once in the back. Detective Jeremy asked CPL Nick Crepeau whether they have talked to any of the neighbors. The officer said one of the neighbors he interviewed said they heard several gunshots around 8:45 p.m., which was exactly 10 minutes before the 911 call. He said the neighbor thinks it was 2 different guns just by the sound. Detective Jeremy asked one of the officers if she thinks the deceased returned fire. The officer said she doesn't think so. The team collects a phone found next to Ray's body. They also found a small piece of cracked cocaine in Ray's front pocket and bloodstains in the kitchen. One of the officers said it's obvious that the deceased have been cooking crack. CPL Jermaine Rogers knows Blue from growing up in the neighborhood. He said Blue served 8 years sentence for intention to distribute cracked cocaine. He said Blue was released 4 years ago. Detective Begg spoke to Blue's mom and sister who discovered the bodies. Detective Begg said he knew she has gone through a lot. She said she doesn't know why they did her baby like that. Detective Begg said he doesn't know where to start. He said he wants her to tell him what brought her to the victim's apartment at that time of the day. She said she has been calling and he didn't answer the phone. Detective Begg asked if that was why she came. She said she is his mother. She said he answers the phone anytime she calls him. Detective Begg asked her what time she called him. She said she called him around 8:45 p.m. and he didn't answer. She said she then decided to come and see what was going down herself. She said when she arrived, the door was opened. She said she went in and she sat on the sofa trying to shake her son. She said she was telling him to get up. She said it twice and she did not see any reaction. She said after that, she saw him in a pool of blood and she started yelling that someone should call the police. Detective Begg asked her whether she knows anybody in the neighborhood that her son might have a beef with anyone. She said yes. She said she is not saying that the person did it, but her son has been having a feud with him. She said he has been threatening her son for a while. Detective Begg asked Blue's mother if she knew the cause of the feud. She said she doesn't know, but it's a long history. She said she doesn't know who did this, but she hopes they are caught and punished. Detective Begg appreciated Blue's mom. He said if she hears anything, she should call him immediately. 2 hours in, one of Blue's relatives comes forward. Detective Begg asked him what was going open. He said one of his good friends said he heard from someone that a girl came to the house with some guys from California. He said he just wanted to let the detectives know about that. He gave Detective Begg the name of the woman that was seen in the house moments before the murder. He said the girl was kind of spook. He said she was just telling him that she was in there when it went down. Detective Begg asked the relative if he knows whether Ray and Blue have any beef with anyone. The relative said he doesn't know if Ray has any beef with someone. Detective Begg asked him about Blue. He said Blue was into something. He mentioned the same man that Blue's mother said was feuding with her son. He said he laid up over there, laid up in the bed. He said that man is out of town recovering from an earlier shooting. Detective Begg asked Blue's relative when the man was shot. He said he was shot about a month ago. Detective Begg asked who shot the man. He said he doesn't know. Detective Begg said he appreciates him and he walked away from him. The team watched how the bodies of the deceased were evacuated before they went back to headquarters. When they got to the headquarters, Detective Begg searched Ray's phone hoping to find the number for the woman who was at the house before the murder. With little to go on, the team decided to reach out to the woman. When she answered the phone, Detective Jeremy introduced himself. He asked the woman if there is any way she can come down to their headquarters. She agreed to come. A few hours later, the woman was at the headquarters. As soon as she arrived, she was taken into a room for questioning. Detective Jeremy and another detective went into the room to interrogate the woman. Detective Jeremy told the woman they just wanted to talk to her and see what's going on. Detective Jeremy asked the woman to tell them what happened. She said she knows Blue and Ray very well. She said that was where they all meet and hang out. Detective Jeremy asked the woman that when was the last time she talked to any of them. She said a few hours before the shooting. She said she was at the house watching a playoff game. She said when she first got there, she met only Blue. She said a few minutes later, some dudes came. She said the dudes were from California. She said they walked in with a suitcase. She said Blue told the dudes to take the briefcase to the back of the kitchen. She said she knew that it was like a drug deal, but she didn't ask them any questions. Detective Jeremy asked the woman that who sold drugs between them. She said both of them sell drugs. Detective Jeremy asked the woman about the money that she think Blue and Ray have. She said she has never seen them with a lot of money or a lot of drugs, but she frequently hears it from them. She said they always talk about spending huge money on cocaine. Detective Jeremy asked the woman what did she think happened back there. She said the first thing that came to her mind was the dudes from California did it. She said the dudes were looking for Ray. She said Blue got on the phone and told Ray that the dudes have dropped the package. She said Ray said all right. He told Blue that he was on his way. She said a few minutes later, Ray pulled up and came into the house. She said he had a book bag. Detective Jeremy asked her what she thinks was in the book bag that Ray was carrying. She said she thinks it's weed. Detective Jeremy asked her for the weight. She said it's probably some pounds. She said she never looked inside the bag, but she knew he gave the other dude a pound of weed. She said a third man stopped by and Ray gave him some pound of weed. She said he was in a blue Honda truck. She said she know a lot of people in the area. She said it's weird that she hasn't seen the face of the dude in the Honda truck before. She said another dude was sitting right on the side of Blue. She gave Detective Jeremy the name of the dude that was watching the game with them. She said the dude was supposed to be cooking for them. She said the dude's job is all about the food, not drugs. Detective Jeremy asked the woman if she knows the name of the dude from California. She said she doesn't know their name and Ray and Blue never mentioned their name. She said they came in a white four-door Kia truck like SUV. She said the driver of the car was a girl. She said the girl never got out of the car for like 4 hours, that the dudes were with Ray and Blue. Detective Jeremy asked the woman if the dudes were white males. She said they were black males. He asked about the female too. The woman said she was black also. She said they were talking about going to New Orleans tonight because the game was today. She said they were like the city was going to have a lot of parties or whatever. Detective Jeremy and his colleague appreciated the woman and they left the interrogation room. They returned to their team members. Detective Jeremy told the team members that the woman provided a lot of insight into what the guys were doing over there. He said it sounded like everything happened because of drugs and the amount of money involved. He said it won't be out of place to say the dudes from California killed Ray and Blue. 11 hours in, Detective Jeremy got a lead from Cyber. A white car matching the description of the one used by the men from California was spotted on neighborhood surveillance cameras 5 hours before the murder. The next day, Detective Jeremy got the name of the woman who rented the white Kia to the dudes. She picked up the car from the airport a day before the murder. Detective Jeremy searched for her on Facebook. A few minutes into his search, he saw a video posted by the woman just 2 hours after the 911 call. Detective Jeremy said it would be a tight time for them to have committed the murder and be right back in the airport at that time. He said they knew the guys from California brought a suitcase full of drugs to the house and dropped it off on the day that Blue and Ray were killed. He said that the timeline rules out them from being the suspects in the murder case. Detective Jeremy said it's a little bit disappointing because when they feel they are making progress and it hits a wall, he said they have to start all over again and pursue another angle. While Detective Jeremy was checking out on the guys from California, the woman who was in the house before the murder reached out. She told Detective Jeremy that everybody in the neighborhood is saying that the guy that was driving the blue Honda was the one that did the shooting. She said the guy that drove the blue Honda was still at the house when everybody left. A witness found out the name of the man in the blue Honda. He has no prior convictions. His older brother, the alleged shooter, has prior convictions for possession of drugs and possession of a controlled substance. As the first 48 hours slip away, the team decides to wait to bring the man in the blue Honda and his brother. In the first 48, Mobile Homicide responded to the murder of Nelson Ray Bedgood and Blue Taylor. They heard from a witness that before the murder, two men from California arrived at the victim's house with a suitcase full of drugs. The witness heard rumors that Blue and Ray were been round for the drugs and shot by two brothers from the neighborhood, but decided to wait for more evidence before bringing them in for questioning. 17 days into the investigation and desperate to identify the brothers who were at the scene, the team finally reached the fourth man who was at the house before the shooting went down. As soon as he arrived at the headquarters, he was taken into an interrogation room for questioning. Detective Jeremy and another detective went in to question the witness. When he entered the investigation room, he identified himself. He told the witness to tell him everything that he remembers about the murder. He said he got to the house on Sunday when the game was on. He said Blue was on one couch while Ray was on another couch. He said the two men from California were there along with two other men that he didn't recognize watching the playoff game. He said he told them he wants to go and cook. He said he went home and started cooking. He said his wife told him to go and check on Blue because he just got shot. He said by the time he got to the terrace, he met policemen everywhere. Detective Julius asked him if he remembers the time he left there to go and cook. The witness said it was around 7:40 p.m. Detective Jeremy asked him if the guys were still there when he left. He said they were still there. Detective Jeremy asked the witness if he will able to identify the guys from California if he sees their picture. He said he will. Detective Jeremy showed him a photo lineup of the man in the blue Honda. The witness was able to pick him out. Detective Jeremy showed him another photo lineup. He picks him out along with his elder brother. Detective Jeremy and Detective Julius appreciated the witness for his time and they walked out of the investigation room. 2 days later, the man in the blue Honda told Detective Rogers that he wants to talk. He was brought to headquarters and immediately taken to an interrogation room. Detective Rogers and Detective Jeremy went into the investigation room to interrogate him. As soon as they entered the room, Detective Rogers told him to say what he wanted to talk about. He said 2 of his closest friends got killed. He said when he heard the news, he thought it was a lie. He said there is no way anybody could have snaked them like that unless it was somebody they knew and let them into the house. Detective Jeremy asked why he was at the house that day. He said he went there because he needed something from him. Detective Jeremy asked him what he needed from him. He said he needed 4 ounces. He said he went there specifically to buy marijuana from Ray. He said when he walked into the house, he collected the 4 ounces and put them in his pocket. He said he was smoking weed with the other dudes from California, and they were also watching the playoff game. He said he left after some time and came back. Detective Jeremy asked him why he came back. He said he went there to pick his brother. Detective Jeremy said why did he want to pick his brother? He said because his brother hasn't seen Ray in a minute. Detective Rogers asked him what was going on in the house when he went in. He said the same thing. He said he and his brother left the house about 2 hours before the murders. Detective Rogers asked him if every other person was there when he and his brother left. He said everybody was there. Detective Rogers told the suspect that he wants to be straightforward with him. He said they know that he didn't leave during the daytime as he claimed. He said they know he was there at night. The suspect said he was not there at night. Detective Rogers asked the suspect where he was when the murder happened. He said when his partner and the victims got killed, he was nowhere around there. He said he would have been dead if he was there because he was on drink and was already dozing out. He said he was fighting his sleep all day. He said he wouldn't have been there talking to them if he was there when the murder happened. He said God woke him up. He said God told him to go somewhere. Detective Julius asked him where he went to. He said he went to his grandma's house. Detective Julius looked the suspect in the eye and asked him who did the shooting. He asked the suspect who shot Ray and Blue. Detective Julius said he is getting fed up. He asked the suspect that who did the shooting between him and his brother. The suspect said if he had something to do with the shooting, he would have told them. Detective Julius told the suspect that if he wants the matter to go far, he is fine with it. He stood up and left the room in anger. Detective Julius joined his team members and they had a short discussion. At the end of the discussion, they decided to hold on to the suspect while they track his brother. Detective Julius put a call through to the brother. He told him that they want him at the headquarters for questioning. He said he will be right there because he has nothing to hide. 30 minutes later, he showed up at the headquarters. He was immediately taken into an interrogation room. Detective Julius and Detective Jeremy went in there to interrogate him while other team members watched from outside. As soon as they entered the investigation room, Detective Julius asked the suspect if he knew why they were there. He said he knows. He said it's because of Blue and Ray. Detective Julius told the suspect to take him through what happened that day. The suspect said his brother came to him that day and asked him if he wants a ride with him over there. He said they went to Terrace to see his partner, Blue, and Ray. He said they watched the playoff together. Detective Julius asked the suspect who was at the house when they got there. He said they met Blue, Ray, and two other dudes that he doesn't recognize. He said there was also the man who left around 8 p.m. to cook dinner. He said there wasn't anything going on rather than watching all of them watching the game. He said a few minutes later, his brother came to him and told him that they should leave. Detective Julius asked the suspect what time they left. He asked it if it was dark. The witness said it was dark when they all left. Detective Julius asked the suspect who was there when they all left. He said to be honest, he thinks they were the last people to leave. Detective Julius asked him again whether they were the last people to leave. He said they were the last people to leave if he isn't mistaken. Detective Jeremy told the suspect that the issue they have is that what he is saying is different from what his brother is saying. Detective Julius told the suspect to explain to him how his brother got hold of his codeine. He said he doesn't. He said he couldn't tell them. He said he doesn't have the codeine, but his brother had it. He said if he knows the killer, he would tell them. Detective Jeremy and Detective Julius told the suspect to give them a second and they walked out of the investigation room. Detective Jeremy and Detective Julius joined other team members who were watching the interrogation on their screens. Detective Jeremy said he thinks the elder brother is more honest. Detective Jeremy worked on the case for 5 more months before he finally got a break. A man came forward claiming that the man Blue was feuding with was involved in the murder. He said the man was screaming in the hood like everyone that challenges him will end up like Blue and Ray. The man Blue was feuding with has prior convictions for receiving stolen property. He spent 5 years in prison after pleading guilty for drug possession with the intent to distribute. Detective Jeremy said it is clear that hatred exists between the two. He said they gave to find the man, sit him down and see what they can get from him. 2 months later, with no sign of the man, Detective Jeremy left the homicide and ended off the case to Detective Rogers. After a 5-month search, officers finally tracked down the man Blue was feuding with and he was arrested on a warrant. Detective Rogers said he can't wait to interview the man and see what he can get from him. He said Detective Jeremy is not coming back, so he has to interview. Detective Rogers went into the interrogation room with another officer, while the rest of the team members watched the interrogation from their computers. As soon as Detective Rogers entered the investigation room, he told the suspect that he wants to know what happened in Terrace. The suspect said he doesn't know what is going on. He said he was at home recovering from gunshot wounds on the night that Blue and Ray were murdered. Detective Rogers told the suspect to tell him what happened before then. The suspect said Blue paid some boys $1,500 and a half ounce of powder to come and kill him. He said when he came out of his store, they started shooting at him. Detective Rogers asked the suspect why he was shot. He said he doesn't know. Detective Rogers told the suspect to take him through what happened on the day Ray and Blue were killed. The suspect said he was at home on his sofa smoking a blunt of weed that day. He said he was at home minding his business. He didn't go anywhere. Detective Rogers asked the suspect where his son was that day. He said his son was at his aunt's house in Pritchard. The suspect said he was happy it was all over. He said they shouldn't get him wrong because he was happy. He said he was happy because no more shooters are coming at him. He said he cared less what happened to them because they paid some folks to kill him. Detective Rogers asked the suspect that why does he think that people are saying he was involved in the murder of Blue and Ray. He said he thinks that when the feud got them, He told some folks that Blue had that dope and they came and got him. He said there hasn't been anything since then. He said that's the only thing he can think of. Detective Rogers asked him who he contacted to make it happen. He said he didn't contact anybody. He said he doesn't have friends. He said he prefers to be in custody because it's safer for him compared to the neighborhood. The suspect became angry and said he isn't talking anymore. He said they should take him to the Metro. He said he is cool with that. Detective Rogers and his colleague walked out of the interrogation room and joined other members. The man Blue was feuding with was taken to jail on his unrelated warrant. Detective Rogers said he will check all his phone records. He said if he pulled that off, he will certainly make calls to some people. He said he will check his phone records and see if there is any link. Detective Rogers was unable to secure accurate phone records for the prepaid cell phones used by the man beefing with Blue. The man has not been charged with any crime concerning Blue and Ray's murders. 2 years later, the case remained unsolved.